Hey, welcome to the latest edition of the First Day Copites podcast, a podcast for Liverpool fans in Delaware and friends and associates and whatever else of those fans in Delaware. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, or YouTube if that's where you found us. One quick thing just to open up with, I just realized I have a brand new copy of the new official Liverpool Supporters Club of Delaware scarf in my possession. So I thought I'd proudly share that with you today. If you remember, they're available for $20, I am told. So there we go. Welcome back to Tim, because we're going to touch on a few things related to Germany, fan ownership, RB Leipzig, and the detestable Bayern Munich are at it again, stealing other people's things. Yes, and maybe we'll even touch on Ibrahima, I think it is, Konate, and whether we really think he's coming to Liverpool or whether that's, well, to be determined. We're also going to touch on what's been going on with, obviously we didn't play this weekend, thanks to our friends in Manchester who managed to get the game called off. A lot of commentary going on around that, which we'll touch on. We'll also, before we're done, pick on a few kind of highlights from Liverpool's week, including an FA Youth Cup win. So the Reds are now in the semi-final, and a couple of players that got rave reviews, even though I don't know where you could watch this game, but I saw some highlights on YouTube and I read a few match reports, if that helps. So we're going to get to all that. Tim, I'm going to start with you. How do we position this? The protest against the Glazers, an example of fan solidarity or just a parochial fight up the East Lancs Road that is none of our business?
Yeah, I think, as we are well familiar with in the United States, I'll leave it at that. There's certain subsections of the fan base, it seems like, that were justifiably upset about the forming of a Super League or the attempt to form the Super League, and then are using that excuse to kind of take out their frustrations that they've had for what's almost 20 years now, right?
Yeah.
That was my general take on it. I think, most of the stuff, like the week of the announcement, I kind of could get behind, like that was extremely underhanded. But then, when at least 2 weeks on from it, then you decide we're going to storm our stadium, we're going to break our own stadium, we're going to throw tripods onto the field to protest people who we've been protesting since 2005. It just rang a little hollow to me.
Yeah. I don't think it's so there hasn't been a lot said about this except on my tweets to other people, but it is interesting that the lockdown ended. You can get served beer outside now in England, probably have been for the last 3 weeks. It was a holiday weekend. I do think that, I don't know, because they claimed it was really thought through and organized. I kind of wonder whether a lot of the sort of extremes were actually more of a facet of kind of being in lockdown for a long time and the opportunity to just get out and be yourself. That's what the guy with the camera was doing.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of that. I think at one point on the live coverage Sunday morning, they went to, I forget who it was now, maybe it might have been Arlo on NBC's coverage, and he was kind of like holed away in a little room, and he had his mobile camera and he's looking out the window, and you just see the whole outside concourse there of Old Trafford, and it was just like the ground is littered with bottles and cans and stuff like that. And they said, so alcohol may have had something to do with this. It's like, yeah. I think that's fair to say, it may have.
At the risk of poking Sean too much about this, because I know he was on our Signal group, kind of very upset about lots of things. I'm hesitant to bring up Gary Neville, but I will. I mean, it seemed like when we were listening to it or kind of getting some of the things he originally said, it felt like, well, this guy must be out on the edges here of saying this is all okay and it's the Glazers' fault. But it did seem that most of the stuff that we saw certainly in the immediate aftermath, seemed to be supporting that. And from a Liverpool perspective, I found this very disorienting, where he tried to conflate the FSG ownership with the Glazers ownership, which, yeah, wow. Gary Neville, big supporter of the Reds fans, obviously, yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to go on too long about this because I did get pretty ticked off. The whole thing was ridiculous. I think the reaction to the Super League, personally, I thought it was ridiculous. I understand why the fans reacted the way they did, but it seems to me that the whole thing was driven by Sky and how the media presented it, as like these greedy American owners are ruining our game, which is not what happened at all. The thing was driven by Barcelona and Real Madrid and Juventus, and the fundamental problem with the game right now is that UEFA is corrupt, and you have PSG,
Allegedly.
City, and Chelsea out spending everything.
Seferin's listening to our podcast.
So, Gary Neville's just a massive hypocrite, and I don't think Carragher was any better on this. They're just continuing to play into this like contrived anger of fans at something that isn't real. The American owners are not the cause of this at all. I mean, I understand people don't like them. They were not the cause of any of this, even if you hate the Super League.
Mm.
So, like, I was just saying before we got on, I feel like I'm in the movie Idiocracy, where like it's just these like made up narratives that aren't true, and everybody's angry. And so what happens is the Manchester United fans, they all get drunk and attack their own stadium and say it's because they want the Glazers out. But the whole time they're shouting, "You Scouse bastards," wrecking everything. They claim it was peaceful. There was nothing peaceful about that. It's totally ridiculous. They kept saying it was a peaceful protest. And then everybody wanted to jump all over Graham Souness afterwards. And he said some things that were stupid. But one of the things they got angry about was that he was saying that it wasn't peaceful. They were shooting flares at them and throwing beer cans. And people were attacking him for saying that. It's like, he's just saying what happened. Like, that is what happened. And it's the whole thing, just the way it's been characterized in the media and the way people have just followed the leader of Sky TV, like regardless of whether any of it's true or not. It's just been crazy. And then the fact that Liverpool and FSG get sucked into it when we had absolutely nothing to do with that mess.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. Like there was just so much about it that I was like, and then the thing that really actually got me upset was that I see our supporters are jumping on the bandwagon with all this crap. And I'm like, this is just bizarro land, but it's just the whole thing to me is crazy. Like there are fundamental problems with the game, and all this anger could be directed toward the places where you could make good changes and significant difference, but that's not happening because of these stupid narratives, and then the fans just kind of get angry at American owners, which is not going to change anything. So
there are actually a lot of narratives out there, aren't there? And I think the one I have the biggest trouble with is this call for solidarity, to have kind of fans band together and change the game, which of itself is like hard to say, well, that's terrible, why would you do that? But the problem with the solidarity with what they were calling for was essentially, if you take them at their word, and it's about the Glazers. Neil Atkinson, I thought, put it really well when he said, We've had our Glazers, they left us in 2010. We've got a new ownership now. We don't need to be conflated with your argument. And certainly you're battling the Glazers is nothing to do, because what you're really upset about is that they're not spending the money on United. they're basically paying the loans off with, and they're paying themselves dividends. So you got an entirely different argument. You might have a terrible set of owners, but I don't know if he said this, or this was Paul Tompkins. He kind of said, like, how can it be that these kind of American billionaires, the Glazers in particular, can be worse than the sports washing company with a terrible human rights record that's kind of covered up by their glossy image, playing across the city.
I mean, they're justified to be angry at the Glazers for certain things, but I mean, some of it's overblown, I think. And I think ultimately they're, what they're really angry about is that Liverpool's done better than them and City's doing a lot better than them. Like a lot of what Graham Souness said, I think is actually true. I think if United had not fallen off the way they have, you wouldn't see this level of anger. I mean, there are legitimate things to be angry with the Glazers about, but they have spent, they it's not like they haven't spent and bought players, and they brought in Mourinho, who's expensive, and it's not like, I mean, they've been poorly managed, they've been poorly run, but it's not like they haven't spent money. They are racking up debt, but I'm not a financial expert, but I've heard people say, it really doesn't matter, like the way that they're managing the debt, because eventually they'll sell it and somebody else will just pay off the debt. Is sort of the expectation. I don't know how much of that's true, but frankly, I don't really care about United. It's more like the way the media narrative is sort of pushing this whole thing, and the other thing I'd say is just like the solidarity thing really gets to me, because when Liverpool was in this position, we did not act like this. There were protests. They did everything. When Hicks Gillette were there were plenty of protests. Boycotts, all that stuff. They didn't do this. And imagine if they had done it. There's no way they would have reacted the way that they did. With how Manchester United, peaceful protests and all this nonsense. They would have docked us 3 points before the riot was even over.
Well, that's a whole other question, right? It's like, what do you have to do to forfeit a game? But let's not even go there. But the one thing I would say, Sean, actually is worth pointing out, if people don't know, is the Glazers have invested nothing in Old Trafford. The roof leaks,
right? Yeah.
There is probably paint peeling. They've invested in things that allow them to continue their revenue stream. So, their ridiculous acquisition of the piano player, what's his name, Alexis Sanchez, as an example. Some ridiculous amount of money for very little benefit.
They haven't been good owners, but I just, my point is, like, their lack of success is not because they haven't spent money on the team. It's because they've been poorly managed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Long may that continue. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. If you have final thought, Tim, on the whole, it sort of, I don't know, feels like we're now at the point where we've spent long enough talking about kind of ownership. But I do, one thing that does concern me more than anything actually is that seems to be like have developed like an anti-American thing in a lot of this narrative, which I find particularly insidious, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, and it's definitely a bit odd. I was talking to one guy and had the question, like, because obviously there's a lot of FSG out stuff going on now since the Super League talk. And I asked the question, would you rather have FSG or would you rather have some sheikh who has his oil fortune to come in and run the team and not care about anything and change the logo and change the colors and all that stuff? And it seems like there's a large portion of the British fan base, at least, that would actually prefer that, because then we can buy Holland and then we can buy Mbappe. So it's just, I think there's a lot of misthought kind of things going on with it. And obviously lumping in there is the fact that the Americans are ruining our game. Yeah. When I think, if anything, like from our standpoint at least, I think FSG has shown how it can be run more efficiently and not dump billions of dollars, just signing free agents who are already great, but actually finding talent and things like that. So yeah. If anything, you could find fault with some American owners, I'm sure, but I don't know if FSG is the place to look for it.
Yeah. So I know people do point to a bunch of things, but the reason I was highlighting the Glazers not investing in the stadium, I mean, look at what, look at the stadium now compared to the way it was when FSG took over. And, people will come back and talk about furloughs and ticket prices, but honestly, look at them as the best of a bad bunch, but I definitely wouldn't trade them for any of the other owners of the other big six. So.
Yeah, true. Yeah, we're not going to trade them for Chelsea's owner, right?
Right.
Well, and the only thing I'll say is like one of the signs, one of the chants you saw people, United fans saying Glazers out, and I can't remember the name of the company, but some Russian owned, you know, Putin buddy oil company, just like Abramovich, and whatever the name of the company is in, that company in. I'm like,
Oh, great.
so like there you go. I mean, that's better than the Glazers because they'll spend endless amounts of money, I guess.
Right.
No, obviously we have a certain geographical perspective, but I find it a struggle to think Russian oligarchs come higher in the pecking order than kind of American billionaires who may have cheated your club of a few dollars here and there. Thinking about the Glazers again, or the Cronkies.
Yeah.
We're go ahead.
I was going to say they're on their way out for more Americans, right? For the guy who founded Spotify is apparently the heir apparent to Arsenal's throne.
Oh yeah.
I don't think they're selling. It's like where's the incentive for them to sell, right? Unless they get offered more than they're worth.
Right.
I did think it was weird. As a final thing, but I did think it was weird that when Arsenal had protests outside the ground and they played the game and drew 1-1, the Sky interviewer was inviting Arteta to blame the fans for not winning the game, and yet the whole tenor of the Man United thing was, oh, this is entirely justified.
Yeah.
It was just makes you wonder who's doing the coverage, who they support. Anyway,
that's a big part of the reason why I was getting. Yeah, because they're just contradicting themselves, and it's all centered around just getting people pissed off.
Yeah,
so that they'll watch Sky TV basically.
Right. Yeah. I'm not going to talk about Neville and his crown jewels reference, and because I think enough's been written about sort of the hypocrisy of that. And the last word. You were comparing Carragher to Neville. I mean, the difference with Carragher is he doesn't own a team with a billionaire that's kind of juiced up so they get promoted through the lower leagues of English football. So he's, irrespective of his kind of mouthpiece on Sky, he also is in a slightly interesting position, let's say, to be making some of these assertions about greedy people.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Carragher for me is that he never seems to stand up for Liverpool, and he jumps on the bandwagon anytime they come up with these stupid, they're lumping in FSG with the Glazers, on that program. He never sort of speaks up on Liverpool's behalf. He never makes a point that sort of defends Liverpool's interests. In my opinion, he unfairly criticizes a lot of our players, Trent being the primary one. And I don't know. I'm kind of tired of him this year. He's done so many things this year that I've looked at and been like, like you're supposed to be a Liverpool legend in saying this stuff and supporting this, But I understand he has to draw a line and there has to be a balance there, but he takes it too far. Like he just both he and Neville, it seems to me, they just try to do whatever they think is going to be the popular thing to say, and there's no real merit to anything they say. It's just whatever they think is going to be popular, which, so, and that's not their, I guess their job is to be popular and have viewers, but they're supposed to be analysts giving sort of objective opinions. And it's,
So I'm not going to say the final thing again because I doubt it will be, but there was a serious point made on one of the feeds that I looked at, and maybe it was the Anfield Wrap, where someone suggested that his support for United fans in this may have been linked to remember when he got suspended because he spat at somebody coming home from a United Liverpool game? I don't know if you remember this a couple of years ago.
Oh yeah, no, I do. Yeah, in the car, right? He was in his car or something.
And suggesting, that maybe he didn't feel like taking a very pro Liverpool stance on this would be helpful to continue to be invited back on Sky. I don't know. As I'm telling you, it doesn't sound as plausible as it did when I read it. That's kind of funny, isn't it? It's like
I would have liked for him to make the point of like, imagine if this had happened at Anfield, how do you think everybody would have reacted?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like, how are you, if you're a former player and you're supposed to be a Liverpool legend, how do you not think of that and make some related point, you know? It's just, there's nothing. I mean, and the way this is all playing out, it's going to end up hurting Liverpool because they're probably going to jam an extra game into a week we were only supposed to play one game.
Yeah. Well, that of course assumes these games actually mean anything, which, you know, I don't. We're gonna move on. We are gonna move on. We're gonna go to Tim's specialist subject, and we're going to talk about what's been going on in Germany. So, a quick recap for those who don't know. RB Leipzig appear to be about to lose two of their best central defenders. Well, they're certainly losing Upamecano to Bayern. It was some very authoritative Twitter guy, was it Fabrizio Romano, last week was telling us, apparently he's got things right before. I don't know if that means he's reliable. That Ibrahima Konate is coming to Liverpool in the summer. And then last week it was announced that Julian Nagelsmann, the RB Leipzig coach, is going to Bayern Munich, following a very well-trodden path of I guess maybe not by coaches, but certainly by all these players who've left, up-and-coming teams and gone to Bayern. The other thing I thought was interesting was there was a lot of talking as well about, and this was in the United protest, people talking about this 50+1 ownership, which was kind of interesting to read because it didn't appear to be the panacea that certainly the people who were talking about it in the Manchester United context would have you believe. Where do you want to begin? Do you want to harass Bayern Munich? Well, I mean, what do you make of the whole like Nagelsmann to Bayern?
So I hate it, of course. I was thinking about this when I saw like your outline, and I was just thinking about it in terms of, to me, Bayern is like Facebook, in that it's, like, oh, Instagram is coming up on our heels, let's buy them, and then they're just not a thing anymore. Yeah. So they just buy the best of every team in Germany. And I think it's so strange because I don't think there's context for that in really many of the major leagues other than Germany, for other teams just kind of like cherry picking from other teams in their own league repeatedly. Like you'll see that sometimes for, like players who have come up, like when, us getting Virgil and Mane from Southampton, but it's just very strange to me. Like even like guys that before I was really even following, things that I didn't realize, like when you look down the list, there's very few players on Bayern's roster that are youth league, like brought up by them. It's usually like Lewandowski coming from Dortmund and just basically like taking money off the top. So I dislike that.
Do you think that has something to do with the 50+1 rule? Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly how it works, but I've heard people say a lot this week that everybody promoting the 50+1 rule probably doesn't really understand how the 50+1 rule works. And I don't know a whole lot about it, but I've wondered if the way that it works somehow helps to keep Bayern in that position where they can keep doing this.
I think the thing that keeps Bayern in position is the way that the league has done profit sharing. Certainly in recent history. I know that the current deal is about to run out, but I was looking it over, and it's some of the stuff just makes you shake your head. Is that as far as I think it was international like television rights revenue. So right now they're getting money from ESPN for the U.S. Televised rates for Bundesliga. So they'll take that money, however much it ends up being, and they give, first of all, it's nice, they give 5 million euro off the top, they give to the second league, one tier down to kind of fund those leagues, and I'm cool with that. And then they take 25% of whatever's left and they divide it amongst all 18 of the teams, and then 50% goes to teams based on their UEFA ranking.
Oh, wow.
Over the course of 5 years. So obviously Bayern is going to get the most of that. And then you're also going to get the remaining 25% is based on either Europa or Champions League games played and kind of your success in the international competitions. So I think it's I was trying to explain it earlier. Like, I think it's intended to be motivation for those mid-level teams to fight for European spots, because then you'll up your international ranking, you'll up, your games played in Europe. But I think instead what it ends up doing is just funding and making Bayern into this like juggernaut that no one could stop, even if they wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The one thing I'd read in one of the pieces was that of the recent revenue growth, I couldn't figure out what recent meant, but it said that 30% of it had gone to Dortmund and to Bayern.
Mm-hmm.
So what, there's 20 teams in the league, or 18
yeah.
teams, and 2 of them are getting 30% of the growth. That's a bit skewed, right?
And I think that is just due to their kind of like success in Europe. Like this year, they both made it to, was it quarterfinals, I guess, of Champions League.
Yeah.
And so that's going to earn them I would assume that Champions League gets a larger portion than the Europa teams do, but I don't know that for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've just been ranked higher, so they just get more money. So it's kind of a rich get richer kind of situation.
Yeah, and not all teams have the 50+1, right? Because RB Leipzig don't have that model.
They do, actually.
Do they?
Yeah. This is more craziness. So 50+1, if nobody, or if people are coming into it not knowing what it is, it's just basically that the fans own 50% of the team plus 1 share, to mean that they get the majority ownership of that team. So if it, the one example I saw used was when Cardiff was taken over several years ago, and the owners came in and wanted to change the blue kit to a red kit, and they wanted to change the bluebird to a dragon, and they could just do that because they were the owners.
Yeah.
So this way, it has to go to the fans because they are the majority owners, and they get to say, it's final. Which, side note, I think is why we didn't see any German teams in the Super League discussion, because the fans got a chance to squash that before it happened.
Yeah. It also, but it's not in Bayern's interest to upset the status quo, right?
So there's a possibility for a waiver. So I think there's 3 teams right now that have a waiver of 50+1. And the basis for that is if a business has been investing significant amount of money for greater than 20 years, they can get a variance for it.
Okay.
So the 2 obvious ones were Bayer Leverkusen, who's I had it written down, I forget where.
Well, Bayer, obviously the owner of them, right?
Yeah, so pharmaceutical company. Oh, here it is. So 1904 is when they were founded by a group of employees of that company. Yeah. But then the business has been funneling money into it, obviously. But since they've been contributing money for so long and shown that they're trustworthy, now they can own more than 50% of the team. So fans don't own 50% of that team. And it's the same thing for Wolfsburg, who, is from a city that Volkswagen created 7 years before they created the team. And then most recently, Hoffenheim is the one that was in the modern era, I guess, who's the founder of SAP. That's his hometown team. And so he has put the money into the teams for so long. So that's one of the reasons why they're hated. But Leipzig is a different thing entirely, in that they basically just figured out how to beat the system.
Okay.
And so Red Bull bought some like 5th tier team in 2009 or 2010, and basically made it so that there were 17 people who own shares. There were 17 fans that own shares in the team, and they all happened to be Red Bull employees.
Right. And
then they limited the amount of voting fans or owners to 17. And so for the longest time, they had just those 17 people. Yeah. So they still had the 50+1, but they all just happened to be under the thumb of the owning company. So it's kind of genius, and kind of, you understand why everyone in Germany hates Leipzig.
But it is like, how else can you challenge Bayern Munich? I mean, it's like you said, that I guess I don't understand how the decision making is made, but if there's a problem with how they divvy up all the money, Like, do all the teams not get an equal vote on that? Like, in terms of how they divvy up the money, they must not, because I'm sure they wouldn't vote to keep giving Bayern the vast majority of the money every year to buy up
Yeah,
all
it's
their best
weird
players.
because in a way they do seem to facilitate it. Like it's almost this
Yeah.
thing. My assumption was always that we knew that if we at least had one really strong German team in the league, that we know that Germany will be represented in the international competitions. And so there'll be some sort of renown for the country, if not my little team. I don't know. It's definitely strange. Like you would think more teams would want to go against Bayern, sorry. But instead they seem to want to more go against these like Hoffenheims and Leipzigs who are not doing it the right way. And instead just, keep everybody like toiling in mediocrity. I don't know.
So maybe the model might not be quite as perfect as the protesters were.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I think it's a grass is always greener kind of situation. I think it would have, it would help for certain things, but maybe these people have like this idea that, if the fans own 50+1 of Manchester United, then we'll be able to go tell them that we need to go get Haaland and Mbappe right now. And they're going to have to make personnel decisions based on what we say.
I did read one of the challenges of it being meaningful is, how do you mobilize if you've got a lot of people that make up that 51%? How do you get them all to vote the same way?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's really got to be an issue that's polarizing, right? Because chances are some people are going to see it differently, which means
right. Or like, how do you even get that many? Like, I don't even know how that voting works. I think about like when I get like a letter once a year from my credit union in the mail saying like, we want you to vote on these 3 topics or something like that. And it's
right.
Because what are the numbers? Bayern's membership right now is 293,000.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find a number for Liverpool. I assume it's probably similar, but that's just a massive number.
Membership, I think Liverpool's is bigger than that actually.
Yeah.
But
I think it'd be more worldwide.
Presumably members in Bayern context means people who have a vote, does it?
Right.
Yeah. Because at some point I read that Bayern have the most supporters clubs across the world, but at one point you could go to the Bayern site and start up your own supporters club. So I don't know how many of those there are. So.
The other part of it, it's that's kind of weird. Yeah, 50+1. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Go ahead, Paul. There was a point there.
Let's talk about next season for RB Leipzig. Well, Konate, what do you know about him? Is Fabrizio onto something?
You know what? Like you said, like I'm not sure. I lose track of who the most reliable people are, other than if it's Pierre Soretti, I know them. We're good to go with it. But
right.
I think there's definitely. It seems like it has more legs than just kind of like the Thiago rumors had last summer.
Yeah.
I've even read stuff to the fact that he's already undergone medical, but you would think that something more would come of it then. I'm happy that, if we are going to sign one of them, I think I'm probably on this very podcast, I've been beating a drum for far too long that I would much rather have him than Upamecano anyway, just because I think he's more of a rough diamond right now in terms of like, he's not going to step in. A lot of people are kind of making it sound like, oh, he's going to come in and he's going to be Virgil's new partner and Joe Gomez can then spell him from time to time. Yeah. I think it would be the other way around. I think eventually, because he's 22 years old now, so he's been playing for 4 years, at a high level, but he's still got room to move, room to go. He seems to me like more of like a Matip kind of defender than a Virgil type defender. Yeah. I think he pushes forward really well. He runs really well. He backtracks really well, obviously, because he's got that speed to him. So I think he'd be a good fit if it's going to happen. But whether it's going to happen.
The Athletic did an analysis. I didn't think he was that old actually. But anyway, the Athletic did an analysis of Konate, and his numbers are very similar to Kabak's in terms of heading, interceptions.
Yeah, I know for Leipzig, it's been a tough I was trying to look up stats, and he played very little of this season. He's only been back for maybe a month now.
Okay.
And then he missed a large part of last season. He was having, I think, hip issues or something like that, which is one of the knocks people have said about him. But he's, I think my height, so like 6'4". So aerial wise, I think he was in like the top like 3/4 of the league the last time he played a full season, just because, I mean, with that height, you're not gonna be good at that. But as we've learned from Nat Phillips being back in our lineup, I think that's a big part of the game that we were missing, trying to start 6-foot central midfielders as center backs. So
on the Romano thing, Paul, my understanding is that he basically takes stories that real journalists have and report on and reports them as his own.
Okay.
So I think he is accurate a lot of the time, but he kind of steals them from other sources. And I think in this case, what I've read or heard anyway is that that it's all over Germany, that it's a done deal,
right.
And it just hasn't been reported by any British media except for Fabrizio Romano's reported it because he heard it from someplace in Germany.
Right. I thought it was in goal. I thought that they'd reported. Yeah, which is generally doesn't dabble in, kind of. I know, think of a random rumor, but it doesn't generally do rumors.
The other thing I was going to say before on the 50+1, just real quick, is from what I heard, my understanding is that if they were to actually try to implement it in England, the government would actually have to get involved because legally they couldn't force these teams to sell 51% of the team. So the government would have to figure out some way to like either buy it or take it. So it's a lot more. It's just a lot more complicated, it seems, than people are making it out to be. But I think it's a great idea. But
great, give another thing for Boris Johnson to focus on, to get high, to
maybe with the new prime minister,
mask those sleazy scandals. It's like, anyway, sorry. Why did we end up with Boris Johnson? So final question, actually, Tim, on so next season, Jessie, Marsh. No Upamecano, potentially no Konate. What's your outlook for next season?
The good news is, I guess, that I don't know much about Jessie Marsh. I know the name just because he's truly followed the Red Bull trail. I know he was the manager in New York for a while and now has been in Salzburg. Now will come to Leipzig. So you can't argue with the results that Salzburg's had, I guess. They're going to be champions for an 8th year in a row, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of that was him. I think I'll miss Nagelsmann just because everything that, like, the few things that I don't like about Jurgen Klopp are what I like about Nagelsmann. Is that Jurgen is very attached to his 4-3-3. And it's going to be the exception rather than the rule if he breaks away from that. And watching the Leipzig games, it's literally every week. You don't know what the formation is going to be. Yeah. They basically converted the guys that were playing fullback a couple years ago are over 6 foot to begin with, Marcel Hulsenberg and Lucas Klosterman, 2 center backs, and they've been playing a 3-back a lot this year. So I think it's going to be okay. It's obviously it's a huge hit to have like young talented guys go out, but they'll just ship them in from Salzburg or someplace else. So,
well, you probably know more about Salzburg than I do, but I mean the one thing in Marsh's credit, right, is he lost Haaland, Minamino, and the third guy left too. So basically he's replaced that front line, and they've continued to be probably punch above their weight for a team from a relatively small league like Austria.
Yeah, I think as I've said, like most of the people that I've heard from in Germany can't stand Red Bull, but I think their player development and their scouting is like second, maybe only to FSG at this point, or perhaps even better than that. So it's ridiculous how they'll lose guys like that, and then other guys who would just fit in seamlessly and buy them from other teams. One of the huge ones, obviously, like, not to talk too much about Manchester, but is Angelino coming in from City to Leipzig, where they've actually used him in his more natural position than trying to shoehorn him into like a traditional left back role. And he's had an outstanding season this year. So I think it'll be okay. It might be a little bumpy. I don't know if they'll challenge quite as hard as they've challenged Bayern this year, but it'll be fun to watch no matter what.
I think he's probably exhibit A in terms of Pep's inability to coach fullbacks. They're not midfield players or something. I don't know.
Well, which is funny because he's been excelling in a midfield role. So as they've been playing that 3-back, he's been a wing back. So go figure. Pep just needs to expand his horizons.
So I one of the kind of memes about Pep you've probably seen is that his ideal is to play a team full of midfielders. Anyway, we're definitely not talking about them. We are going to go and kind of round it out by talking. We'll do 2 rounds on this one, maybe a little longer, and then what I've heard described as a lightning round on just stuff that's going on with Liverpool this week. I talked about the FA Cup. There was the Harry Wilson hat-trick for Cardiff, and obviously that's because Liverpool didn't play. There's a few more column inches being written by Harry Wilson and potentially coming back. Also, they seem to wheel in Marco Grujic into that conversation as well. So pick your topic. One thing that you were really kind of thought was a fascinating topic this week that we can chat about.
So I was on Harry Wilson.
Okay.
Yeah, I watched the replays of those goals, and it almost looked like you were playing a video game because he scored them from all 3 sides or from 3 different areas of the pitch.
Yeah.
The first one was from the left side in open play, and then the other 2 were free kicks. One right up the center where he bent it, against physics around the wall, and then the other one was a free kick from the left side. And the one thing it made me think of, besides obviously, like, is he ever going to get into this team or is he going to go play somewhere else? Do we have someone that good with a left foot right now that can bend it like that with his left foot? Like, I think obviously, Mo is Mo.
Well, he's left-footed. Let's go there.
But being able to see, like I just don't see that much play on the ball like that. That's the stuff that I've heard about Oxlade-Chamberlain, but I haven't necessarily seen. And I think he's right-footed, right? So
yeah.
I don't know if that's a hole that he could fill in the team that could be his inroads, or if it's just, a footnote on his resume to go somewhere else.
Yeah, don't know. I mean, a lot of it obviously depends on how much we have to spend. He's 24 this year, right? I think Harry Wilson.
Is he that old? Okay.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
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 He just doesn't seem like a Klopp player, unfortunately. I think.
Yeah. So it's interesting. You saw him score. I haven't seen any of his games this season, but he certainly clocked up quite a few assists, and obviously that didn't do his goal account much harm, scoring 3. But I think up to last weekend, he was trailing Harvey Elliott. And obviously Harvey's 17. And, having that much impact, or potentially having more impact than, but I certainly think the hat-trick's a reminder, right, of the fact this guy, might at least make us 20+ million in the transfer market, because he's quite clearly a very good championship player. And that, who knows if that leads to a good Premier League player, maybe lower down the league. I don't know.
Right, because where was he last year? Was he at Derby last year?
Yes, he had a really, yeah.
Because he was with Lampard for that run, right?
Oh, so he couldn't have been at Derby last year then?
Is that right? I could be wrong about that.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm getting confused now.
No, I don't know where he was. He was at Derby the previous season.
He was in the championship somewhere.
Yeah. He was at Derby the season we won the Champions League.
That's right.
He scored a free kick at Old Trafford and gave it the 5 fingers. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
yeah, it makes me wonder. I don't watch a lot of championship, obviously, but it makes me wonder like where he's getting played there, because the times I've seen him play with first team at Liverpool have been trying to kind of like fit him into like the left wing role. And I wonder if the reason why I say maybe he's not a Klopp player is that he seems like he might be more of like a wide midfield kind of thing. Like same thing that we see with Shaqiri is he's like being tried to put him into a position that'll fit that 4-3-3. And maybe that's just not the best place for him because he likes to take those long shots, which he's obviously good at because he scored 3 on Sunday. So.
Yeah. I think he, for Derby, he definitely played in one of those the wide midfield role typically. But I think he's been playing up front, like wide for Cardiff from what I read. Which is why I think his assists and his goals are up from where they were.
Right.
So, Sean, what caught your eye, given the big boys didn't get to play?
I don't want to focus on the negative things. There's the race for top 4, which is pretty crowded, and then there was an analysis I saw of that we over our last 38 games we've got like 68 points or something like that, which is just an unbelievable drop off from where we were last season. I think we'll rebound next year, but it still just sort of goes to show you, how far we've fallen. But I've been interested kind of in the summer transfers already. There's Konate and potentially Kabak, but there's also been some rumors about the attacking players like Rafina, Patsandaka, and then this Daniel Malin from PSV seem to be kind of the hot names. But one of them is a couple in midfield too. One of them is Yves Bissouma, who had an outstanding game on the weekend for Brighton. I didn't get to watch the game, but everybody was talking about how great he was in that game. So that's kind of, I've kind of got my mind on next season, I guess, already, even though we're definitely not out of top 4. But I guess, I think the general sentiment among most people is that we're not counting on it based on our recent form. So I haven't watched actually a lot of football recently. I've just been busy. It's not that I've been avoiding it, but I guess my mind's, my mind's kind of already going towards next season.
Well, I may have been doing some avoiding it, but I did watch the Brighton Leeds game because a friend of mine in Liverpool has pointed out to me, and now it's in my head, about how few teams in the Premier League play to win. And Brighton and Leeds strike me as 2 of the few who seem to try to play to win. And it was actually quite an interesting game. The one thing I would say about Bissouma is he's not going to get away with that long range shooting. Like that's definitely.
Oh yeah.
As whilst he was really good for the most part. Just taking these shots from ridiculous positions. It's like
Coutinho used to.
Right. That's exactly.
You drive you nuts.
Yeah. The one ended up in the stands. They were just getting blocked, because he was taken from just. So the thing that caught my eye, and I encourage you to look at this if you haven't seen it, the highlights from the FA Youth Cup quarter-final against Arsenal. Liverpool won 3-1. And I think the most exciting thing about that is just how many good young players Liverpool have. And I'm not going to do justice to any of these names, but the guy they refer to as the Polish Messi, Musialowski.
He's fun to watch.
He's got a great goal. He scored the 3rd goal from a pass from James Balagizi, I think is. I don't know. When you only see the names written down, it's like, is that how you say it? But he looks, apart from the fact he looks like he's playing with kids. I don't know how tall he is, but he just looked like a player. And then our friend, who we thought might be filling in, because he's Billy Cometio played as well.
Oh yeah.
The only bit I saw was he gave away a penalty, but the match report said that he was really dominant and Arsenal really didn't get many chances.
Billy the Kid.
Well, speaking of giants amongst little boys, right?
Yeah.
That guy made some of our first team players look like little boys. So I can't imagine how it's making the under 18s look.
Well, yeah. So obviously they didn't show enough of the game to see Balagizi and Cometio together to see who's the tallest, but he did look big. And if you don't know about Balagizi, he played at Manchester City's under 11 for Manchester City under 11s, and then decided to leave over a dispute about which school he was being sent to. Apparently, Anyway, their loss.
Rat.
Yeah. So let's leave with one lightning round, quick thing that you saw this week. Tim's looking surprised. Maybe I need to give him a pause. I can go first, actually.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah. So I thought it was really interesting that Jurgen Klopp was at the FA Youth Cup game and he was wearing a Red Sox cap. I've tried to engage a few people in this conversation and they're like, oh, can't be bothered. It's not really interesting. But I did kind of wonder whether he was making a statement about like, I'm still in line with these guys. I just seem to, I'm sure he doesn't like run out the house with the last thing he grabs, right? I'm sure everything is intentional.
You would think so. But I actually did research on this one.
Yeah.
And he's been in the media. In December 2020, he was wearing a Chicago White Sox cap.
Okay.
So people wondered if that was a commentary. And then on vacation in Mexico in June 2019, he was wearing a Red Sox cap.
Right.
And in June, a year before, when he was on vacation in Ibiza, he was wearing a Yankees cap, and that was a whole big to-do. So I was like, maybe
that's why they
Jurgen just a baseball fan? I don't know.
That's why they gave him the Red Sox cap, right? Because they saw the Yankees. Yeah.
Listen, you can do anything you want, just not Yankees.
After a week or so, where the owners of the Red Sox had been heavily criticized, it just seemed, maybe that was a show of solidarity. Okay.
It seems like something he would do as well.
Yeah. Well, I think I'd have had more issues if he'd been wearing a Yankees cap for lots of reasons. Like, what is he saying? It's like, okay, Tim, I gave you a breather. What? You shouldn't have engaged me in the Red Sox conversation.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great conversation.
Well, let's go to Sean.
I guess the disappointing thing for me is the fact that I've been reading, again, like lots of rumor mill stuff, that Shaqiri is definitely on his way out this year, even though we've been seeing that basically since he signed with the team. But it would track because this is the year I finally bought a Shaqiri jersey from the team shops. So I could see them sending them out now. So I may have cursed Jordan Shaqiri from playing with our team anymore. But I saw that the rumor that I've seen is that he might go to Glasgow Celtic.
Yeah.
So
we're not getting much money from them though if he goes there.
No, but he would get the crowds, and I think that maybe that's what he's looking for in this career. He was, I don't know.
Yeah.
He seems like a big show guy.
Yes. Yeah. On the Shaqiri shirt, my son got a Shaqiri shirt the first year he came, and I'm like, "You sure about this? I don't know if he's going to be in the team." And like every year, I see the shirt thinking, well, what's the third year now? It's not going to fit him by the time Shaqiri leaves. So.
I bought a fake one the first year.
Right.
This year I bought a real one. So.
Oh, okay. Jeez. Yeah. That's up there with my Chamberlain shirt from the year he changed his number and was out for the season with the knee injury.
Well, I bought a Virgil shirt this year. That's cursed.
Oh, it's all your fault.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I'll get another one.
Although, as I said,
anybody else.
As I said to Daz, I think Pickford may have more to do with that than Sean.
Yeah. Shaqiri, he's a funny player. He's always hit me as somebody that he always seems to do better in a team where he's like the focal point. He's the best player, and he was just never going to be that at Liverpool or at Bayern. And I don't know what it is about that. But whenever he plays for Switzerland or when he's played for other clubs where he's the best player, he looks great. So.
Switzerland, he's ridiculous. That's why I got so excited when he came to Liverpool 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it was, because I just watched the World Cup and I watched a lot of the Switzerland games. And I was like, they got that guy. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Although he does look like he has become less ambitious, I would say, over time. He certainly hasn't. When he's come on this season, he created a couple of things, but he hasn't looked like he's ever going to go past anybody in the way that he did when he first came. But
Right.
So I'm realizing we're out of time, Sean. Do you have one more thing just to finish us off?
I was going to say two quick things. One, looked like, Lille's got a real shot at winning Serie A, which would be interesting this year since PSG always run away with it.
League
and then the second one is Jose Mourinho back in management already, which surprised me. It doesn't surprise me that he showed back up in Italy, but apparently Roma is hiring him. They've had a terrible year.
Poor guys.
So it's amazing how many lives he just keeps popping back up, you know. But I thought he might be done for a while, but he's right back at it.
Nice guys always get right back in there, you know.
So where's that going to put his earnings after being sacked? Because that's I already saw that it's like over 100 million he's earned from contracts that people like cancel.
That's the thing. These teams pay him so much money to come in, and he hasn't even been good the last couple times. You know.
Yeah. On that note, wow, what an episode. Where have we been? We've been to Germany. We've been to Roma talking about Mourinho. And of course, we started at Old Trafford, where I guess we still have to go again because it doesn't look like they're going to forfeit and give us the points. Thanks so much for joining us. Again, subscribe if you get a chance on Apple Podcasts and all those other platforms. Thanks for joining us today, Sean. And Tim, thanks for the really wonderful insights, especially on German football. Okay. Take care, everybody.